Hi, Neil Lazarus here for another podcast, and if you hear cars going by, I'm in that exclusive recording unit, my car. I thought I'd try a quick podcast and say hi to you guys. One, it's the summer, so I'm never actually in a recording studio. I've just come out of a seminar here in Tel Aviv. Great meeting and talk with members of the Masa program, people here for 6 months. Really having a good time. Crazy day. I was speaking to an LGBTQ group earlier this morning. We had a great laugh. It was a little early for them, 8 in the morning. Then continued on to give another presentation, and I'm on to my 4th presentation today. So we're on the road. I don't forget you podcast lovers, and yes, I am keeping to my promise. I'm going to be talking more to keep you updated with what's happening. Here's the story. Gaza. Will there be a flare-up, and if not a violent flare-up, between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip? That's a question we're facing today. Why? Electricity. Let me explain. In Gaza, they use electricity. How do they pay for it? Well, Israel, first of all, provides the electricity to the Gaza Strip, so Hamas effectively has to pay Israel. Of course, that doesn't happen. So what happens is Israel will charge the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority is actually headed by Fatah and is based in Ramallah. How does the payment actually work? Israel will collect taxes for the Palestinian Authority and will deduct money owing for electricity used in Gaza. Now, the dramatic developments this morning is the fact that the Palestinian Authority, Abu Mazen's people, have requested from Israel not to take the money out for the Hamas electricity bill, and effectively said, look, we don't want to pay Hamas's electricity bill. You hold Hamas responsible. We're the Palestinian Authority. We can't even go into Gaza. And you know what? If they don't pay the bill, we won't protest if you turn off the electricity. Egypt has stopped any electricity going into Gaza, and Israel's made the decision also to cut lines, which could put nearly 1.5 million people with 4 hours of electricity a day. That is a calamity for those people living in Gaza. Again, the hospitals will be suffering. Sewage will be suffering, and in this heat, which we're talking about, you could have a huge humanitarian crisis. Again, provoked from internal Palestinian politics. What we do know is that when there's a conflict with Israel over a domestic issue, such as electricity or whatever, it can often lead to actual physical violence. Hamas has said that if Israel cuts off the electricity, they will respond violently. All of this is taking place. We have to see what happens, but I remind you, this is on the backdrop of the crisis with Qatar. Hold on, bear with me. You can always listen again. That's the podcast. What's the connection with Qatar, I hear you ask? I don't really, but I'm pretending. I remind you, let's go back. Donald Trump goes to Saudi Arabia in his visit to the Middle East. The Saudis are remarkably confident now that they have the backing of the United States of America. I remind you that under Obama, it was perceived here in the Middle East that America was going pro-Iranian. Trump goes back on that. He gives $1.5 billion worth of arms to the Saudis. So the Saudis are now putting pressure on Qatar to cut funding to Hamas. We're coming full circle. So Hamas in Gaza is now under challenge with electricity by the Israelis and the Egyptians, being choked with funds by Qatar, and is certainly under a lot of pressure. Will this lead to an escalation of violence with Israel? If that did take place, Israel has committed to ending the regime of Hamas in Gaza once and for all. I throw out a warning, which is be careful of wishing for too much. One of the advantages, yeah, you heard me right, one of the advantages of having the Hamas regime in power is that Israel has an address. In other words, if, I don't know, a radical group decides to launch a missile at Israel, we don't know who it is, it doesn't matter, because Hamas, as the controlling power, will be held responsible, and has been held responsible in the past. One of the biggest problems we could have is if that Hamas was removed from power, we could have a vacuum being created where a number of radical groups are taking control, a bit like Syria, if you like. So that's the developing situation. I jumped ahead of myself, yet we don't know where this is yet leading. Everyone's certainly looking towards the electric crisis and what's going to happen. There are attempts to try and get foreign powers to pay for the bills, including Turkey. I remind you, Turkey supports Hamas, or even some of the Arab countries. But keep watching this space, keep listening to this place, and I will keep you updated further.
Neil Lazarus. Educating, motivating, challenging.